Okay, we have a fresh stack of source material here, and if you've been following the madness of the structured sports simulation, AFT Dice Season 11, you know we're hitting a really pivotal point.
The halfway point, basically.
Exactly. So this deep dive is all about filtering the noise from the signal. We've got the results from a seismic round 9, the updated ladder, which looks more like a traffic jam than a structure, and the forecasts for round 10.
A very interesting set of forecasts.
Our mission today is pretty clear. Give you the shortcut to understanding the season's narrative. We're going to pull out the key stats from round 9, figure out why the ladder is in such a historic mess, and then pinpoint the round 10 matchups that really matter.
Right.
You want the truth behind the season's chaos, and that's what we're going to extract from this data.
And what's fascinating here is the timing of it all. This data covers what the sources are calling mid-season madness Tuesday. It's this point where the whole league is about to get squeezed, as they put it.
Squeezed. I like that.
Yeah. So we're looking not just at the scores, but critically at the margins. Because in this simulation, those percentage points, they're about to become the single most important metric for survival.
So it's all about who stays in that top 6 and who gets plunged into that competitive mire below.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So let's unpack this round 9 carnage. We saw just extreme variance, which, like you said, led to this ladder mess. The source material detailed a mix of, blowouts that shift percentages and thrillers that just confirm how tight this league really is.
A bit of everything.
Okay, so detailing the dominance first. We have to start with the Western Bulldogs. I mean, they absolutely dismantled Collingwood.
Yeah, that was a statement.
A staggering 64-point win. The final score was 125-61. Now, just stop and think about that for a minute. The Bulldogs dropped 125 points.
125. And that 64-point margin, for a team that's currently sitting in the 3 and 6 bracket, it's extraordinary. It just proves their statistical profile.
That they're a wild card?
The definition of a statistical wild card. Their defense is inefficient, their record is poor, but they have this monumental high-ceiling attack. Any team playing them now has to fear the percentage hit more than the loss itself.
And speaking of statement wins, the Sydney Swans, they humiliated St Kilda. The Swans beat them by 39 points. St Kilda was a top 6 contender, going into the week. To get beaten by nearly 6 goals just shows there's no safe haven in this league.
And for Sydney to put up 117 points against a quality defense like St Kilda's, that tells you their mid-table position is deceptively dangerous.
Yeah.
They're not a typical bottom-half team. They're another high-variance threat, just like the Bulldogs.
Right. Now let's contrast that dominance with the desperation of the thrillers.
The close ones.
The tightest match of the round, and maybe the season so far, has to be that 1-point win. West Coast Eagles stole a victory over Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. 104-103.
Wow. That is the definition of a heartbreaker for Port Adelaide. And if you look closely at the data, Port finished with a dismal 19 behinds. Just think about that. If they convert just one more of those, they're 4 and 5 instead of 3 and 6. In a league this tight, one bad day of kicking can define your entire midseason.
We also saw a couple of other really tight finishes. Geelong Cats, they snuck past Carlton by 9 points, and the Brisbane Lions beat Fremantle by just 8 points at the Gabba.
So those are wins earned through gritted teeth, not percentage boosters.
Exactly. And finally, we can't ignore the upsets. Melbourne scored 100 points, but still lost to the Gold Coast Suns by 8 points at the MCG.
The Suns put up 108. That's a shootout.
It is. Plus, Essendon kept their hot streak going, beating North Melbourne by 33. This volatility, it just proves what the source material claims. There is no safe bet. Round 9 maximized the pressure.
It absolutely did.
Which brings us to the ladder. The result of all that volatility is, it's mathematically breathtaking. Let's look at the ladder after this critical round. It's what the sources called the squeeze.
Yeah, and before we do, we should probably just clarify what percentage means here for anyone who's not deep in the AFT Dice rules.
Good point.
It's simply the total points you've scored for your team, divided by the total points scored against you. It's a pure efficiency rating. And when teams have the same number of wins, percentage is the tiebreaker.
The primary tiebreaker. And that's key right now.
And that brings us to the historic bottleneck at the top. We have an unprecedented 6 teams tied with an identical 6 and 3 record, 24 points each.
6 of them. Adelaide, GWS, West Coast, Brisbane, St Kilda, and Geelong.
This kind of logjam at the midseason mark is incredibly rare in previous seasons. The difference between first and sixth is purely that efficiency rating.
It's like a fleet of high-performance cars, right? Some are just tuned a little better.
That's a great way to put it. Adelaide leads the pack at 113.53%, with GWS just behind them at 113.29%. Meanwhile, the team in sixth, St Kilda, is hanging on at around 105%.
So that 8-point gap in percentage, that's the danger zone.
It is. One narrow win or one 40-point loss could see a team like St Kilda plummet right out of that top six. It's that fragile.
That is the critical insight. It means those 6-3 teams are not equal at all.
Not even close.
But the middle of the table is just as dramatic. You've got the second layer of pressure, the mid-table mire. 4 teams, the Bulldogs, Melbourne, Sydney, and Carlton, all stuck at 3 and 6.
And Port Adelaide is also 3 and 6. North Melbourne is at the bottom at 2 and 7.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source says round 10 is just going to intensify everything. The pressure is coming from both directions.
Well, look at the fight for the last spots in the top 8. You have Richmond in 8th and Gold Coast in 10th, and they're both sitting at 5 and 4. That battle is entirely defined by percentage. A single point of margin could flip who's in and who's out.
And what stands out most dramatically in that middle section has to be Collingwood's situation. They're 4 and 5, but their percentage is, well, it's a miserable 84.94.
Yeah, thanks in large part to that 64-point shellacking from the Bulldogs.
Right.
Exactly. Collingwood's percentage is a statistical anchor. They can win every game from here on out, but unless they win by big margins, any other 5 and 4 team with a couple of percentage boosters will fly right past them. They desperately need a 40-plus point win just to get back above 90.
So round 10 isn't just the set of games, it's a strategic scramble for percentage points. Let's transition to the future. Mid-season Madness Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. The source promised 3 blowouts and at least 2 thrillers. Let's dive in.
Okay.
The game of the round is, without a doubt, GWS Giants versus the Geelong Cats at Giants Stadium.
This is 6 and 3 versus 6 and 3, a top 4 showdown.
And the result will directly affect at least 6 other teams. The source describes GWS as scoring for fun, and Geelong is on a roll.
So what's the prediction?
The official prediction is GWS by 12, and the analysis is crucial. The winner here jumps into top 2 conversation.
A 12-point margin does that.
That margin, combined with their already strong percentages, is calculated to be enough to potentially leapfrog Adelaide. This one game sets the percentage standard for the whole week. And then we have the undisputed lock of the round, the must-win for percentage.
That's West Coast Eagles versus North Melbourne at Optus Stadium.
The Eagles are 6 and 3, the Roos are 2 and 7, described as scrappy but outgunned.
And the prediction is West Coast by 48 points. The source calls this the lock of the round. West Coast by 40+, and a crucial percentage booster in Perth. If that holds, West Coast basically buys themselves breathing room for the next few weeks.
But the real drama, I think, is in the Essendon versus Western Bulldogs clash.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
It's the ultimate test of form versus statistical potential. Essendon is on a 4-game win streak. That's stability. The Dogs just dropped that massive 125-point score. That's firepower.
Unpredictable firepower.
The official prediction gives Essendon the win by 9 points. They're calling it revival meets resurrection. But here's the tension. The source issues a huge red flag. An upset alert, Western Bulldogs over Essendon.
And that raises the big question. Which narrative wins out? Is the source overreacting to one big score from the Bulldogs? Or is the 9-point prediction for Essendon underestimating that volatility?
It's a massive swing either way.
Huge. If the Bulldogs win, not only does Essendon's revival stall, but the Bulldogs leapfrog a bunch of other teams in that 3 and 6 cluster.
That's the central conflict of Tuesday. We also have several other high-stakes games. We have the Queensland Derby, Gold Coast Suns riding high after beating Melbourne, taking on the Brisbane Lions.
And Gold Coast is predicted to win that one by 8 points. If that happens, the Suns could leapfrog Brisbane and push themselves into the top 8 for the first time this season. That's how fast that 5 and 4 group can reshuffle.
Then there's the rebound game for St Kilda. They were, frankly, humiliated by Sydney last week.
Decimated their percentage.
But the prediction favors them to bounce back against Fremantle, winning by 7 points.
That 7-point margin is so critical. A narrow win means they stabilize their record at 6 and 4, but they don't repair their percentage. They'll need bigger wins later, especially with West Coast predicted to get that huge booster.
And finally, a statement is expected from the latter leaders. Adelaide Crows versus Carlton.
Right, 6 and 3 versus 3 and 6.
The prediction is Adelaide by 26, which the source calls a roof road trip statement. This is a chance for the Crows to solidify their slender percentage lead. If they win by 26, they stay ahead of the GWS Geelong winner, assuming that game is close.
It all connects.
It all connects. So what does this all mean for you, the well-informed fan? We saw a 64-point blowout and a 1-point thriller in round 9, creating this historic bottleneck. Round 10 is now defined by GWS versus Geelong for top 2 status, and that huge conflict between the Bulldogs' upset potential and Essendon's steady form.
This synthesis shows the data points to just extreme volatility and maximum competitive pressure. The predictions suggest an intense Tuesday where percentage differences and tight margins, like that 7-point prediction for St Kilda, will define the entire top 8.
It's not just about winning anymore.
No. It's about controlling the margin of victory in every single game to climb that percentage ladder.
Absolutely. And building on the source material, which promised 3 blowouts and 2 thrillers for Tuesday, you have to ask yourself, we have the West Coast game locked in for a blowout, but where are the other 2 coming from? Will it be Richmond over Sydney or Adelaide over Carlton, delivering that massive percentage shift? Or will the winner of GWS versus Geelong manage to push that margin way higher than the predicted 12 points and just fundamentally redefine the entire race?
That's the thing to watch.
That's what we'll be watching for. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.